Greetings and salutations, and we're back once again with the hardcore one talent challenge. Paladin, Sacrifice Paladin, as a matter of fact. The first, all the way through normal, I picked up Sacrifice. I am in Nightmare, and the rules of this are simple. Whenever you go up a difficulty, you can then pick another talent, and that is the only talent you get to add to your current one talent, one skill. I picked Sacrifice as my first skill. Bale was kind of problematic. And then I decided to pick Might. In hindsight, I probably should have picked something completely different. Probably Thorns, which would have made it. I think I chose not to do Thorns because it'd make it too easy. But I picked Might, and we're in Nightmare. We're going to try to get as far as I can in Nightmare or die. And it is all self-found stuff. So the stuff I am wearing is exactly all I've found throughout the game. And you could probably go back in my videos and see how I've progressed through the whole thing. What I did learn, though, is how sacrifice is actually calculated, which I found interesting. Sacrifice is... Ow! That was painful. Mana burn cursed. So, sacrifice is actually calculated by having the character, when you cast sacrifice, you'll see here it says 1% damage to self. Now, when that 1% damage to self happens, it's 1% of the damage you deal, and then it goes into your mitigation of how much damage you reduce before calculating out the 1% damage to self. It's really interesting how they did that calculation, because you'd figure if it was just 1% damage to self all the time, you would just blow up, because it starts out at 7%. But as we are playing Diablo, I'm of course going to go into the whole philosophical mindset. A lot is happening. Not really philosophically, but more so like geopolitically, and I kind of hesitate to jump into that because most people don't want to hear that. They hear that every day. So I'm trying to go more of a philosophical route every time, and in this time I'm going to talk about the implications of AI. I kind of mentioned this in the Windrose thing, right? Now people seem to think that AI is going to come in and steal everybody's job, etc. No, not quite. There are going to be a lot of people that are having their jobs basically curtailed due to AI. Now, these jobs being curtailed due to AI, yeah, you can kind of get bummed out, because it's like maybe you're a designer or a developer, but you don't really... Your talents, I guess, aren't really shining through. Like, for example... maybe you're not a completely talented developer. Not saying that that's a bad thing, because everybody can be a moderately skilled developer or a moderately skilled designer or something, and they just need that little bit of outside influence to point them in the right direction, or to give them an idea that allows them to go further, right? And I've noticed this about a lot of people that like to just dunk on AI. They're like, oh, what good's AI doing? Well, as I mentioned in the Windrose video, I said AI can be your, like, framework maker. Like, it makes the framework of your game, or it could make the framework of fashionable design if you were doing, like, designing clothing, or modern house design, furniture design, so on and so forth. It can help you out in those regards if that's not your strong suit. Maybe you have an eye for style when it comes to color, color selection and pattern selection, and what patterns work with which solids, and so on and so forth. Me, I have none of that. I mean, you're better off just hiring blind people. I mean, because my color coordination is awful. My wardrobe selection is awful. And if it wasn't for... Well, if it wasn't... I think the key is I really don't have that much of a care in the world on how I dress. And I think that helps out because I sit there and I'm like, you know what? It doesn't really matter. But that's the thing is, if you have an eye for color and you have an eye for, I guess, pattern, not really too much of an eye for design, you could actually take a look at it and say, okay, well, this will work, this won't work, and so on and so forth. Okay, so if that works, and AI can fill in the gaps there, it is helpful. It's very helpful in that regard. Because now you can sit there and be like, okay, well, I might not know how to do it, but the AI can kind of point me in the right direction, so to speak. Kind of like that. That was actually a really solid shield. And so, with the AI being able to supply sort of like a framework setup, it kind of allows people to explore more into a kind of pseudo-renaissance, if you will.
Thanks.
By pseudo-renaissance, I mean, like, look at it this way. Mankind, when faced with, say, the Industrial Revolution, right? Ow. When mankind was faced with the Industrial Revolution, what happened? People ended up becoming... They had basically a second renaissance. You had craftsmen showing up out of nowhere and being able to actually create things, works of art, sort of artisan made. And you're going to have that again. You're going to have a third renaissance because you're effectively going to have people sitting there looking at the work before them and saying, you know what if I did this, or what if I did that? And I think with the amount of free time they're going to have on their hands due to AI basically taking the majority of what am I talking about here? Hold on. Menial. That's the word I was looking for. Menial. I was looking for median and menial, and it came out median, or medial. You're going to have people that are going to be sitting there having menial jobs, like, you know, working in a factory, for example. Now, I'm not saying that it's menial in the sense of nobody wants to do it. It's more along the lines of if you had the choice of doing it or doing something else with your life, you'd want to do something else with your life. You don't want to sit there working at a factory all the time, do you? So, knowing that, you know, not everybody wants to sit there working at a factory, it's going to bring about a change in the workplace where, whoops, nobody cares about you, Kasia. Another point in might. We've almost maxed out might. Put that there, deposit that there, put that there. He does not have the strength yet. Rip. Wished he did. That'd be great. What do I have for runes? Not a whole lot. I do have Tier Tal Omn. I don't have Omn. I have Tier Tal Ort. That could go in the edge bow, but I won't use that. I would put that on an Act 1 mercenary. But no, like really realistically looking at it, when you see it from the perspective of if you had the free time right now, what would you be doing with your life. Like, what task or career or job would you do? Right? You would be doing something you enjoy doing, something potentially marketable that you enjoy doing. Of course, having that marketable passion is the hard thing to find, because not all passions are marketable. So there is that if there's not a market for it, it won't gain traction, which exists. But you'll find that artisan goods will be on the rise in the near future. Not so much like the Etsy kind, but you know what I'm saying. Like, people actually wanting to do something with their own hands and create something truly authentic of themselves, from themselves. That sort of renaissance, artistic renaissance, will come around again with the advent of more AI. Because as AI takes away more and more, like, physical labor jobs where people are working in a factory, nobody wants to do that. Just like with robotics, when robotics came around, it removed a lot of physical labor. People, again, had another moment of, yes, we're going to have another sort of renaissance. And the renaissance wasn't as big. I mean, back when the robotic jobs first started taking over in, like, this, I'd say mid to late 80s, early 90s, people started delving into becoming musicians, learning how to code. They started going more toward the arts because robots couldn't do that. And look at the balloon of people in the music industry from the 90s to the 2000s. There was so many people. I mean, you had people coming up out of nowhere and making a name for themselves. Right? That similar type of renaissance is going to repeat itself. The problem is yes, in this regard, an AI can indeed create a level of music that is comparable. So AI can indeed encroach upon that, but it has to be prompted to do so. An AI is not just going to sit there and be like, yes, I'm going to go and create a banger out on a laptop for no reason, right? An AI is going to do what it's prompted to do. It's not going to just do it on its own accord. So you don't have to worry about an AI taking the music industry unless people know what they want. Perfect use for AI. People know what they want in a style of music, but do not know how to play it. There was somebody I knew back in school, way back in high school. He could not read sheet music. Couldn't read sheet music at all. He tried. He did eventually learn, but it took him, up until his senior year to learn it, because it just didn't make sense to him. But he could play by ear. If he heard a song more than one time, he could play it. Didn't matter what the song was. You could have him sit down and listen to Moonlight Sonata. You could have him sit down and listen to modern music. You could have him sit down and listen to rap music. He could play it on the piano. Just by hearing it. He was an incredible talent. Don't know what he's doing anymore, but he was an incredible talent. Amazing player. And that's the thing. Someone like him would have wanted to create his own music, but because he could not read music, much like, similar issue, different characteristic, deadmau5. deadmau5 can't play music. He even said that in his masterclass advertisement. He's like, well, if I could just play it, I would. And he's like, but I gotta sit here and do this all day. Because he knows what he wants from his song, but he can't physically play it. So he has to write it by using a program and then constantly adjusting it, changing it. Same effect applies. And that's the thing, is there are many talents out there that, knowing what they want in a song, it would be so much easier to just prompt an AI and say, I want a song to be built like this, and then they sit there and they fine tune it because the AI doesn't completely understand the vision they're going for. So that would make it easier for the songwriter to crank it out. But you then run into, would people sit there and point at the music that the songwriter made, and because they used AI to write the actual sheet music of it, would the songwriter be then discredited as not being a composer? I don't think so. See, I think if it comes from the human mind, even if you tell the AI to do it, it's coming from the human mind, therefore it is the human creativity that is causing it. Because like I said before, an AI will not do anything unless prompted to do so. And I've had many different conversations, and I say conversations because it is two-sided. I've had many different conversations with AI, but it's usually about things that are in the realms of physics and nuclear physics and electrical physics. And I am not knowledgeable in any of those things at all. I'm not good in physics. I'm not good in like electronic physics, or how physics and electricity interact. I'm good at none of that. And so I've had multiple discussions with Grok about the reusing of potential fissile material from a fissile power plant, a nuclear fissile power plant from fission. Now, how I had this discussion was actually quite interesting. I sat there and I kept coming back to this whole thing. It's like fissile material loses its strength, right? Everybody can kind of like agree that when you use a fissile material outside of the heavy water, which is pulled off and then contained inside of a lake, a man-made lake, the fissile material eventually degrades over time because of the constant use of it and it constantly giving off, material. And then, of course, once you have the spent fuel rods, you have a problem because now you have to get rid of them. So, I asked Grok, I said, is it possible to recharge spent fissile material using fusion? And I was told, unequivocally, no. Because the material used for fission is heavier than the material used for fusion. They said it wants, when you're using material for fusion, it's usually like radioactive nickel, radioactive cobalt. It's radioactive isotopes that are lighter weight than if you were to use fissile material, which is usually uranium or plutonium. So, I then asked, okay, what if you were to use radioactive fissile material? Is there a way to recharge, or potentially recharge, radioactive fissile material, the rods? Through the use of, I had to turn on my fan back there, through the use of either a Hadron Collider or a particle accelerator. I was told, yes. Yes, indeed. You can indeed recharge a spent fissile fuel rod by using a particle accelerator. That you can recharge the spent fissile material by accelerating the particles. I said, okay, knowing this, is it safe to say that we can make a nearly lossless system by recharging our spent fissile rods? Because if we can recharge our spent fissile material, now you're curtailing waste. And you're curtailing a waste redundancy. And if you curtail the waste redundancy, you're talking about potentially not needing as much fissile material, so now you don't have as much nuclear byproduct. And he's like, it wouldn't be limitless, and it wouldn't be nearly limitless, but it would definitely reduce the amount of fissile waste from a nuclear power plant. I said the only problem is someone like me, where I live, which is out in the rural area, said nobody's going to listen to a country bumpkin with no physics experience about this. And I was told to then post it on things like, IAEA's website. It's like, it's not like I can go knocking on their door, number one. Number two, let's think about it. Anybody that messes around with the certain industries disappears. Because I didn't want that. I tossed it on the ground for a reason. Because you become a threat to, obviously, monetary structures, profit structures. So then I went further, and I said, so with nuclear fusion, I was like, what are the byproducts of nuclear fusion? And I was told that the byproducts of nuclear fusion are plasma arcs. So I said, well, how come they don't harness the plasma arcs on a Mobius strip style device, where it's, if you don't know what a Mobius strip is, the infinity sign where it's just a sideways 8? It's that, but with a 90-degree kink in it. So as it's coming around this way, it takes a 90-degree turn and goes down that way and then comes back up and then takes a 90-degree turn. So it would be almost like going up this way and then having the cross section this way, not overlapping one another. There would be a gap between them. And then on the outer rims of that Mobius strip would be where you would harvest the plasma arcs. And I was then told by the AI, yes, it would actually be a more efficient way to harvest plasma, or to have plasma arcs. I said, so why don't they just put down a grounding point and capture the plasma that arcs off to save more power? You put in a grounding point, and the grounding point discharges into a capacitance, into an electrical capacitance. And he's like, well, a grounding point would work, however, he's like, plasma arcs are so hot that it would melt the strongest substance to harness electrical arcing, which is tungsten. It would melt it very quickly. I said, so why does it have to be a hard point? Why not just use water with a high salinity? Because water with a high salinity is an electrical conductor, whereas regular water is not. And I was then told, yes, that would indeed work. You could use a higher salinity content water to harness plasma arcs. And it's like, so what you do is you have a pool of water with salt in it, and then at the bottom you have an arc point where the plasma discharges into the water, and then it goes down through the water and discharges into the tungsten. It cools it enough so that the tungsten doesn't melt. And then the tungsten goes and becomes the capacitance point where it recharges that way. And then Grok came back with, why not just go and use molten sodium instead? Molten sodium would conduct the electricity, wouldn't melt the tungsten, and would give you the grounding point you're looking for. And I said, now that would help with the amount of... I said, you're basically turning a byproduct into a product. And he's like, yes. He's like, most people don't think about turning a byproduct into a product. He's like, instead, most people think of a byproduct as something that you have to get rid of. They don't think about using it as a product and harnessing it. He's like, that really is an ingenious way of looking at it. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how come nobody thinks about this stuff? I do. But no one else seems to. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that the people aren't intelligent enough to do so. Because I'm sure they are. But how come nobody else thought about it? How come nobody sits there and goes, what if? And it seems weird that people don't. Which then brings me back to my original... There was an original thing that I told a multitude of people. One of the things I told individuals throughout all the time is I kept saying a phrase, the more you learn, the less you think. Which people would say, well, not necessarily.
Yes.
Really? Think about it. Really sit down and noodle it out here. The more you know, the more they cram knowledge into your head, the less space you have to sit there and question what if. Which is that's the whole reason everything is the way it is now, is by people questioning what if. Ooh, double axe. That's berserkers. And that's people questioning what if. So when you question what if, what are you doing there? Well, what you're doing is you're saying, I want to challenge what is an accepted norm, and I want to say, but wait, what if? Wait, tell S. I can make stealth out of that. Would give me faster run walk. Don't have cannot be frozen though. That's fine. Does this have, wait, does that have strength? Does that have strength? Does not have strength. Does Tal F have strength? Maybe. Potentially. If it does, I could put the Partisan on the Merc. Interesting. For example, let me give you a for instance. A good for instance, as a matter of fact. My sister, the other day, was dealing with back pain caused by vomiting. She had gotten nauseous and she started vomiting, and the retching and the vomiting caused the back pain, and the back pain being caused the vomiting, further vomiting. So to break that cycle, I sat down and I thought it out. I was just like, well, what's the causes of vomiting? Pain. So, okay, so what are the causes of the back pain? And I'm like, it's not kidney stones, because she would have blood present in the urine. We asked her and she says, no, there's no blood present. So it's not kidney stones. I was like, okay, what else causes it? And I was like, can't be adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure, because she's not having that either. And then I went further, and it really... My mercenary just died again. So it couldn't be adrenal fatigue, because she wasn't having that. And we ruled that out rather quickly. Put on Tal F. Use dexterity, regenerate mana, stamina, poison resist. Put that on right now.
Hello.
So
Greetings.
I sat there and I'm like, okay, what are the other causes of back pain? And I kept just rolling them through in my head. And I was like, muscle strain. She's not having kidney failure because she's going to the bathroom like 15 times a day because she's consuming a ton of water. So her kidneys are working. It's not adrenal fatigue. It's not adrenal failure because she's not exhibiting any signs of that. So I thought, okay, well, the only other option it could be is back pain from pulled muscle strain. So we go and we give her some. It's a topical muscle relaxant, and it's all natural. It's an all natural topical muscle relaxant. And we gave that. We put that to her. We put it on her back. Made her back pain go away, which made her vomiting go away. And that's the thing. Nobody sat there thinking, what are the causes? Nobody sat there thinking, running down through a list of what's causing this. This didn't occur until recently. And then it's like, well, what happened recently? Well, this happened recently, which was the muscle strain. And it's like, okay, so the muscle strain happened recently, which is now causing the vomiting, which is recent. Shortest distance between two points is a straight line. And that's it. It's logic jumps. The majority of the world runs off logic anyway. So you take that into effect, you take that into account, and as an effect about, one led to the other. Next thing you know, you've got your solution. And with that as the solution, we've managed to curtail her vomiting with just using the topical analgesic. And again, it boils back down to thinking, what if? If you had sat down, if you had gone to the hospital for the vomiting, they would have put an amount of anti-convulsion, or not anti-convulsion, what is it called? It's not an anticonvulsant. It would be a type of medicine they would put in that stops the bowel from spasming. Antispasmodic. That's what it's called. They would have given her an antispasmodic, which that wouldn't have fixed anything because she still would have vomited because of the pain. And then they would have put her on a painkiller, which wouldn't have done much of anything because they would have probably put her on an oxy of some kind. Which is bad because you don't want to be on those because those are opioids. So, we would have been left with no answers and another massive hospital visit. Okay? Now, am I saying that that's going to work every time? No, I'm not. Actually, wait, give me that great helmet. One socket. We'll jam that right in there. I think I've got an idea. Helm. Ow, 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 ow. Go start. So that's what made me sit down and think all that out. Go, okay, well, this is this led to that, and so on. Because if I didn't sit down and think that all through, what would I have gotten? I'd have gotten nowhere. And had we gone to the emergency room, I don't think she would have gotten anything out of it. How much strength does this guy need? He's at 102. He needs 113, so he needs 9. Sorry, 11. My brain was not with me for 2 seconds there. 11 strength. Helmet, helmet, helmet. Yeah, there's stuff in the shared stash, but I don't carry it with me. I don't use it. It's all been self-found. So, let's see. If I was to get to this, it would only give 10 to strength, so it's not even enough. We're putting that back on, and then this is going to go right there. Unless I can find a gem that says, or a jewel that says plus 12 to strength or something. It's unfortunate. Or if I can find a way to get him extra strength. Potentially on that ghost armor. Who knows? Might have it. No. I'm not saying that we shouldn't trust, the medical field or anything. Not at all. I mean, I personally don't trust them, but that's my proclivity. I'm saying that if people had sat down and thought about it, you'd come up to the right conclusion. You would eventually come across the right conclusion of, what causes that. And that's that whole people need to think more. They need to question, which was the root of everything, right? People used to question with boldness. They used to question everything. Now they don't. They just take it at face value and go, okay, yep, sure. Because again, it's easier. Well, they have experts. Well, yeah, but the experts tried to tell me that eggs were bad for me, and then eggs were good for me. And then it was the yolks that were bad for me, but the whites were good for me. But then it was the whites that were bad for me, and the yolks were good for me. And then it's back to the eggs are good for me. A whole bunch of the same experts kept trying to... They couldn't figure out eggs. Something as simple as eggs. Same way with milk. Same experts say the same thing. Well, milk's bad for you. No, wait, milk's good for you. Okay, so high-fat milk's bad for you. But until you're on keto, at which point high-fat milk's good for you. It's like they cannot agree on anything at all, and yet we're supposed to sit there and believe them. You guys can't even come to a consensus on simple things like eggs and milk. I think I'm just gonna, go with my gut on this one, if you don't mind. Of course, people would say that's a bad idea. But again, is what it is. People are going to do what people do. And that's one thing I've been trying to tell people as well. You're going to have people who are going to make their choices in life. And when these people make their choices in life, you have to sit down. Whenever an individual makes a choice, right? Doesn't matter what choice they make, right? And this is something that people, I guess, could take with them as a bit of knowledge. The knowledge that I want to impart to people is when somebody makes a choice, you don't have to agree with the choice. You don't have to sit there and say, yes, I agree with that choice wholeheartedly. You can just say, it's their choice. They chose. Right? Now, for some people, the choice they make is a bad choice. They don't know it's a bad choice. But it's up to them. It's their choice. They're allowed to make it. All you have to tell people is that you support whatever decision they make. And that's it. Just let them know you stand by them, even if you don't agree with it. You could say, I don't agree with the choice, but I support your decision. And that's all that anybody could ever ask of somebody. Is to just say, I support your choice, whether or not you agree with it. Because there's so many people out there that don't think that their choice is going to be supported, right? Like treatment options for an illness, for example. Some people want to go the naturopathic route. Other people want to go the traditional route. And you have a whole group of people that don't support those treatment options. Or they don't agree with it. But they don't support the person's right to say, you know what, I'm choosing this way. Or, like, career decisions even. I have faced in my life multiple people that have told me that they don't agree with me doing this. YouTube, having a chat, having a almost like a philosophical discussion, and playing games. I've had people that didn't agree with it. That said, I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting my life. But then I've had other people say, keep it up. Keep going. You only truly fail if you quit. And you want to know something? That is something that I have managed to say to other people. Failure only truly occurs when you stop trying. The most successful individual in the world was the one that failed the most. Right. The one that failed the most times learned the most, and that's why he was the most successful. Because every single time he failed, he learned, okay, don't do that again. He learned, okay, don't do that again. Like, for example, I tried many moons ago to stream. I found out streaming's not as good, it's not as easy as YouTube. And in many cases, it's not as good. YouTube, once you get to a point that you're an established creator and you constantly make and constantly create, which is why I try to upload every single day. I try to have an upload up every single day. I've missed one day in 2 years. And that's because it completely slipped my mind and I thought, oh, well, I've already gotten an upload for it. And then I found out later, nope, I didn't. So I've only missed 1 day in 2 years. And missing 1 day in 2 years is a pretty good track record. Didn't matter if I was sick. Didn't matter if I was busy. I would wedge in the time. I would find the time to do it. And as such, I have been a very consistent creator. As a streamer, it's a lot harder. Because when you stream, you have to have that component talking back to you. Otherwise, you just look like a crazy person talking into a camera all the time. And I've thought about streaming again. Every once in a while. You know, might actually do a stream one day. Might stream on Kick, might stream on YouTube, might stream on Twitch. Don't know. But I've thought about doing it again. You know, every once in a while. Just kind of kicking back and giving it another go. Did I use my imbue from normal? Let me check on that. I don't know if I have. I hope I didn't. He really needs to get into that. That will help him out a lot. 46 to 103, and he's got poo. Let me check the, see if I have imbue on normal. I don't know if I do. If I do, I'm going to imbue this blessed scepter.
What you need?
Nope, I spent it. Okay, so now that I know that, yeah. But I will end it here. And if I do get into streaming, I'll probably end up streaming something like Hearthstone or not this, because this is something that where I would honestly go and become philosophical. Though I could do it a hardcore one talent challenge stream and pick a class and then go from there. I could do that. I might. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. That's in the future. I may or may not return to streaming every now and again. However, I'm never going to stop doing this. It was partially because I enjoy doing YouTube, but partially because there's a lot more freedom in it. And I encourage everybody to try it. Definitely try making a YouTube channel. Whether it be putting out your music out there, whether it be you getting up there and sitting there making a singular podcast, talking about things you're passionate about, talking about things you enjoy, talking about geopolitical things, possibly a theology podcast if you enjoy religion. Physical, like physics podcast, talking about nuclear fusion and nuclear fission and how to have sustainable fission reactions and so on. Whatever it is, try it. Make a YouTube channel on it. You never know. You might just be a success. Especially if it's something you know. Auto body, auto mechanic, small engine mechanic, electrical engineering, electrician, the do's and don'ts, just anything. If you're talented in it, do it. The thing I'm talented in is what I'm doing right here. Advising people. Because you have nothing to lose by posting a YouTube video. Nothing. Except for a little bit of time. Take 15, 20 minutes, hour out of your day and post a YouTube video. Make an account. It's free. Make an email. It's free. Just do nothing. Get a camera. Wait, you can do that on your phone. This little thing right here has all the technology to make a YouTube video in your hand. And instead of making about clickbaity advertisements or whatever, you can make it. And you can circle back to the beginning of this whole thing about AI. You can use AI to make you a thumbnail. Doesn't even have to be a clickbait thumbnail. It could just be a regular old thumbnail. I make my own thumbnails. I take an image, I alter it, I add stuff to it. I make my own thumbnails. Now, when I make my thumbnails, do they look like they're made in MS Paint? Yeah. Do they look like they're made by a toddler or an ape? Yeah. But you want to know what? I do it anyway. Because it just shows the love of the game, the passion of it. I want to do everything by myself so that I can look back and say, see that? I did that. I achieved that. I went there. I made that. And as I proceed, look at my thumbnails. They get better and better and better. From what they used to be to what they are now. They're light years better. They used to be hideous. Now look at where I am. But I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I know I did. I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow. Give YouTube a try. Every single person out there, I encourage you to step out and try that first step. The biggest thing that happens is it might not be a success. Oh well. And try again. Take a step back, reassess, take another step. And as always, have a good one.